what you play individually as like a keyboardist and what you sing, and then as well as completely for the entire band, there's obviously some form of like core value that you're trying to like portray to an audience. And I was curious, like, what are those values, I guess?
When you say values, you mean like actual like human values or like musical values?
I guess both.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, you know, inherent in the songs that we write, I don't know necessarily if, like, I think that for us, the playing that we're doing and, you know, the way that I choose to play my keyboard or the parts that I choose to write for the other people in the band, everything is driven by the song for us. So everything comes from the songwriting and the overall dynamic that we're trying to bring over the course of the journey that is created in a, you know, 3 to 5 minute song. But I think that, like, a very, very central core value and idea in the songwriting for us is, and I guess this is on the human side too, is to just try to have some amount of like balance and reality to what we are presenting to the world. Music right now, particularly pop music, are so extreme in the like emotional content. It's either I'm the best, I love myself, everything is awesome, or it's like I'm so heartbroken, everything is terrible. And at least for me, that's not really representative of what real life is like. It's kind of a sexy idea, and it's very clear to a listener. It's very easy and consumable. But to me, life is a lot more full of gray areas. There's a lot more yin with the yang and yang with the yin. And so we try to make songs that are either happy and ultimately fun and uplifting, but with some amount of groundedness in melancholy or self-deprecation, or some amount of a nod to, you know, something that feels more diluted than just the most absolute pure enthusiasm and euphoria. And I think that, you know, we could go through examples of Lawrence's songs and find examples of that.
Right.
And then on the flip side, even in Lawrence's, you know, sadder songs or more melancholy or ultimately reflective songs that have a bit more of a negative light, there still is always some amount of a silver lining or a wink or a smile somewhere in there that just feels more honest and true to like the way that real life is. And then that carries over into the way that we try to act when we're performing on stage, the way that we try to act in our social media or in press interviews, or when I'm talking to you right now. I think like we're trying to be just like the real people that we are, rather than trying to create some product that is so easily consumable. And like this is the kind of thing where like when you watch a certain pop star perform or give an interview or even just walk down the street, you're like, is that a real person? Like I don't even get what I'm looking at right now. Like we try to combat that in both the music that we write and how we present that music on a recording or through branding or on stage. So that sort of would be the main value that I think is present in a lot of what Lawrence does. And of course, with us being a family band, it's all the more important because we feel like we are, so much of what our band is about is like the reality of who we are. And the lyrics are more conversational and full of euphemisms and the kind of things you might actually say to a person in real life. And ultimately, I can't speak for Gracie, who is a fantastic actress and performer, but I consider myself a terrible actor and performer. And frankly, I would not be able to or even be remotely comfortable being anything that felt like I was actually putting on some kind of a show or having to like get into character.
Yeah,
like,
I definitely see that. Yeah, very, very cool. I've definitely noticed that. because I'm not sure if you remember, I was at the Sinclair when you guys came to Boston, and
this past December.
Yeah, and when you guys were performing, I definitely noticed that. Just even like the small cues. Well, this is actually going to go into my next question. In general, I think when I see you guys play, the actual sense of who you are as people, like you were saying, it's being portrayed in a real light more than like this, washed over character that, most pop music and other music on the radio is trying to portray like under a label. So I was curious as to like what really is the influence for why that is the case. Is it really like your fan base, and do you really feel that that's really what more people, like these small pockets of people, are like looking for? They're looking for more genuine music? Or do you think it's because that's who you guys are, as you kind of mentioned this before, but this is like who you guys are as people, and this is like what you wanted to do it as like an initiative, like on top of making really great music?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that like the line, it's a really great question, and honestly something that we are wrestling with a lot right now as we continue to take the next steps in Lawrence's career, is like finding the very hazy distinction between like something that is who we are, and so it just is what it's going to be, versus something that like we should be like fighting to keep a certain way. Like, we talk a lot recently and this interview comes at a funny time. We're likely in the next couple weeks, or maybe even next couple days, about to announce that we are going to be going on tour this summer, opening for like a major pop artist, and like we just went through a management change, and there are like a number of things that and we've gotten some attention on the industry side from some people that have presented opportunities to put the music out there in a way that is really excitingly on a broader scale than what we've had so far, which has already been awesome. And so a big question, or not question, there's no question, but a big point of focus is making sure that we are able to hopefully bring on new fans and continue to bring in people to the fold while maintaining everything that we love about what Lawrence is, and what you as a existing fan of Lawrence loves about Lawrence, and making sure that not an iota of that is compromised. And so like in conversations about like if we're going to be playing in rooms that are thousands and thousands of people capacity, we need to have more production happening as far as like a lighting show is concerned. And if we're going to be starting to perform in more high profile press situations like late night television, or playing in front of more pop audiences, should we be paying more attention, whether it's a conscious thing or whether it's like just the way we are? It's kind of like always evolving. Like the way we are is in our heads as we're making conscious decisions, and like we'll have to see if we try to say, oh, we're all going to dress a little more whatever, if when it actually comes out that way, if the fans are going to be like, oh, it's still just the same Lawrence, or if people are going to be like, whoa, that's totally different.
Right.
Does that make any sense? Like,
I totally get that. Yeah, for sure.
When we were making Living Room, like, we felt that the kinds of songs we were writing and the kinds of sounds that we were thinking about employing were drastically different than Breakfast. And in a lot of ways, they really were. Like, and the process of making it was drastically different. Oh, yeah. And we were thinking, like, man, are our fans going to just be like, what is this whole new vibe? And I'm sure that a big fan like you is able to identify some of the differences.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
A lot of it comes down to what you're in it for. And, of course, we are in it for having as many fans as possible and having people love it. But more than anything, we are in it to make the music that we make. Like, Lawrence just is whatever music Gracie and I and the rest of the band are trying to make, and that can evolve and change, but like the one common thread will be that like it's about these songs that we like to write. And this isn't a knock on anybody else, but the state of the music industry is, I truly believe, such that like a lot of people, including a lot of very talented, successful people, aren't necessarily in it for those exact same reasons.
Right.
So certain things like what the general tone of the brand is and who they are is a little bit more variable. And I think that maybe it's something to do with the fact that this is music that Gracie and I have sort of been writing or honing since we were kids. Like, but the fact of the matter is that, like, I think that Gracie and I have a bit more of a stubborn sense of, like, not really compromising those things. I'd rather us stick to exactly what we want to do and have it take us to wherever it's going to take us. And I believe that that is hopefully quite far, than sacrifice anything to take it even further or bigger or whatever that is. And that's an opinion that a lot of other artists would necessarily share for their own projects, and that's totally fine. But yeah, I think for us it all starts with the music, and I think that, like, to speak to what you were saying about, like, how can you be different than everybody else, or like how does Lauren stick out, hopefully for better, but I'm sure in some people's minds, or sometimes for worse, like a sore thumb compared to all the other things that you hear. And I think that, like, there's not a lot of conscious effort on our part being put into that. I think that it's just like the music that we make comes out like us, and the honest truth is that, like, 90% of the music in the pop music world is coming out from, like, a group of people that have formed almost like a gross, weird committee to, or I don't want to say gross and weird, but have formed a legitimate, like, committee to try to create music for someone. And that is just the process and the machine. And I know a lot of people that are a part of that process, and they're incredibly talented. But that's not exactly what Lawrence is. We love collaboration, and we will always do it, but this is just the music that we are making, and so there's always going to be that common thread to it.
I mean, you mentioned it a bit, but I just wanted to take a step back for a second and think, like, you know, if we put ourselves in, like, either my shoes or any other aspiring musician who wants to kind of, like, advance their own music and, like, try to publicize it and try to really take their first step into the actual industry. I was just curious, like, what was your, like, path that you went across? Like you were saying that you and Gracie as kids, that, like, you guys were writing songs, but I was curious how that formed into, like, you know, meeting up with your friends and then forming the band and then kind of actually, like, you know, recording and producing the music as you got older. Like, I was curious how that all happened, like, either, you know, on a long span of time or even a short span. Like, I'm just curious.
Well, so I think that we were kind of in a fortunate position where I think that what a lot of people are is, I think that a lot of people enjoy writing songs but don't necessarily have the opportunity or the resources or the community to put together a performing act that really is picking up steam. And then on the other hand, there's a lot of people that, you know, like to perform regularly but never really learned the craft or cared about honing the craft or had the interest in putting a lot of time into writing original music and learning how to properly record that original music. I think that for me as a young person, I was obsessed with songwriting and learning how to record that music. I had very little to no interest in performing. And I kind of saw myself as an eventual maybe songwriter for other people, or maybe for a band that Gracie would be the sole leader of. I think Gracie came at it from the opposite direction, where she always wanted to be a performer, and only later in life did she gain any desire to actually, like, be a songwriter. But I think that what we lucked out with was that when we were in college, and by we, I guess I just mean I, connected with other people that eventually were the other members of the band, were just friends of mine from college. And we started to just play shows around campus where we would kind of play some covers, and we would also play these original songs that I had written. And they were you know, good songs for a college band to have. A lot of them were the songs that ended up on our EP Homesick, or on Breakfast even, were songs that, you know, I had written in high school. And so we started playing those songs around campus, and we just really gained a strong following around campus. And I think that what we were really fortunate with is that, like, our shows became almost like a party or an event because of the energy that the music is. When people ask me for advice about how to jumpstart their careers, it's really hard for me to give them advice, because Lawrence had the added advantage of our shows being something that you didn't have to say, hey, come see this band with me if you like this kind of music, da-da-da-da. It was like, no, just come to this party. You're going to have a good time. The band is dope. Like, it was almost the kind of thing that, like, you didn't need to be a music person to have fun at. It was just like, when Lawrence was having a show, it was like one of the most fun things to do. It wasn't even just about music, you know, it was about just the energy that the show created. And that was something that, like, we tried to carry into our real shows, where, like, you, as a Lawrence fan, don't have to just invite people that, you know, you think are big music fans. Like, you know that if you're bringing just a bunch of friends who may be otherwise not the biggest music people,
right,
but they're still gonna have a great time at a Lawrence show.
Exactly.
And so, like, it was much easier for our shows to catch on like wildfire, sort of, and it really, like, spread in a unusually fast way. The way that people say that their, like, videos went viral or their social media went viral, like, we haven't been lucky enough to have that happen, but, like, to whatever extent they can, in the early going, our shows really went viral, with, like, the word of mouth spreading such that we would play another show in the same location a month or two later, and there'd be double the amount of people there. So when you were able to have that turnover, that was really how it started building. But then the most important thing was that we were able to back it up and show that we were more than just, like, a bar band or, like, a party band, by putting out music that we were proud of. And, like, I had put in the time, and Gracie had put in the time, and the band had put in the time to, like, really hone these original songs over the years and years, which is something that I think a lot of party bands don't necessarily have. I think that, like, the biggest reason why talented people fail is because they're putting investment in the wrong areas, and they're not, like, attuned to what is most likely to make them successful. So it might be a band that's, like, you know, not putting enough stock in, like, making better videos because they are big Lawrence fans, and they read your research paper and found out that Lawrence got its start by really putting on dope shows. So they think that that's how you do it, but their shows aren't as dope as Lawrence's, but their videos are way cooler, and they're not putting out enough of those. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's about knowing yourself as an artist, and, like, being realistic about what the thing is that is bringing in fans at an unusually high rate of, you know, the word viral is very overused, but, like, if you were to just steadily, very slowly and steadily gain fans over your career, you'd never make it, because you need so many fans to really make it. So, like, you need to, and that's a sobering and shitty reality. Like, in order to make it as an artist, you need to find a way to gain an unusually high rate of, like, fan onboarding. And so, like, as an artist, you just need to figure out what that is. What is it? Essentially asking the question, what is it that makes me special? What is the most exciting and special part of what I'm bringing to the table as an artist? And you don't need to answer that for yourself.
Yeah.
Fans will answer that for you. And it's not necessarily what you want it to be. Like, I consider myself a songwriter first. Like, that is my passion. Songwriting is what I love. And I know that, you know, all the Lawrence fans out there love Lawrence's songs, and that means the absolute world to me. But, like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that, like, the songs are the sole thing that brought us to where we are now. Like, I know that the shows turned people's heads, and then they found the songs. It sounds like that wasn't the case for you, and it isn't the case for an increasing number of fans as we start to gain more traction on Spotify. But over the first couple of years of our band's existence, I almost had a chip on my shoulder about, like, damn, I'm almost, like, bummed at how well our shows are doing compared to, like, our recordings. You know, you have to be honest and realistic with yourself about, like, what is the most effective part of your operation.